We must develop a vision of full citizenship for everyone. And full citizenship for everyone includes persons with disabilities. So as a society, we have an economic interest in tapping all the resources that are possible.
It's not good enough just that workers get injured and thrown on the scrap heap at whatever level of benefits they get. It's important that we tap into their resources and bring them back into the work society. And it takes a responsibility on all parts of society to do that.
If you can't prevent the accident in the first place, if you weren't successful there, then be as successful as you can at getting the individual the right kind of treatment and back to work in a healthy and safe environment.
These are huge dollars that you can't turn your back on. As a businessman looking at your bottom line, you must make sure your business has strong disability management program in place working with your employees.
It's far better to have someone who has been in the workforce back to the same job rather than try and hire a new person and train them all over again.
The real focus needs to be on clear human values. It's simply the right thing to do to not have accidents, and if we should have someone who becomes disabled, get them back to work as quickly as possible.
The challenge is to really focus on the abilities of individuals as opposed to their disabilities. And what this will take, both corporately as well as from the trade union side, is leadership.
A remarkable revolution is underway, improving the lives of workers all across Canada. A powerful concept known as disability management. Among the pioneers in the field was the West Coast forest industry. Workers who were injured on the job used to be routinely pensioned off and put out to pasture. Many never returned to work. Not only was that policy expensive, it was also a shocking waste of human ability and experience. Disability management provided the answer, a cooperative labor management program based right in the workplace. It provided a model for reintegrating injured or disabled workers back into the workforce as soon as safely possible. The success of early pilot projects led to the foundation in 1994 of NIDMAR, the National Institute of Disability Management and Research, a tripartite venture by government, business, and labor. NIDMAR now provides intensive training for disability management professionals whose job it is to orchestrate the early return to work of injured employees in their company. Disability management passed its first tests with flying colors, showing dramatically improved results for disabled workers, better productivity, and significant cost savings. With that kind of success, it wasn't long before other parts of Canada began to show interest in this new approach. Alberta was one of the first.
We truly want to make Alberta workplaces safer. And if there is an injury, if somebody is unfortunate and they get hurt in the workplace, we want to, as safely as possible, return them to work. The improvements on return to work results have significantly driven down workers' compensation costs, and that's significant to employers. When people take a look at success, which means more productive workplaces, less costs in human and economic terms, then people say that's a much better place to be. And when they analyze the key ingredients of a successful program, it is every single time cooperation, communication, working together. They absolutely have to have a joint commitment to prevention, to improving disability management. So we've got labor and employees, the WCBs, understanding that huge opportunities are when we're working collectively.
In some form or another, people want to work and want to be productive, and there becomes a dignity and a purpose to their life, to the life cycle. And when we take away that, whether it's through injury or whatever, then that's lost. If we're going to work out solutions that are workable for everyone, then labor and business have to be involved together.
There's really no downside to this, because it is an opportunity to build. And then once you've built that new platform of trust, you can continue to build on it. But this is a win-win for all concerned.
It's really encouraging to see that large national employers like Canadian Pacific Railways have adopted, together with the unions, disability management programs and practices throughout all of their operations right across Canada.
The Canadian Pacific Railway has committed itself to making work safety its #1 priority, and they're enjoying outstanding success. But accidents do happen, and the company also has a strong disability management program which is saving money and helping to retain valued employees.
You'll be set to depart following 418, over.
Bernie McCourt is a rail traffic controller at the CPR's main control center in Calgary. 3 years ago, he lost his leg in a rail yard mishap. The road back was tough, but having a good job to come to and a supportive company made a huge difference.
I was a trainman, a train brakeman, and conductor. I was working in the yard the night of my accident. I was caught between two train cars. My leg was caught. And following about 2 years of rehabilitation, achieving physical functionality again, I returned to work in the position of rail traffic controller. It was fairly related to what I'd done in the past. I do enjoy the job. Yeah, that will be into track 1 at Saberton, and your lift is in track 2, over. The accident which I had was life-changing, and self-esteem is a big issue. One does have the need to feel useful. So certainly the opportunity afforded by having a responsible position that one can return to, I feel fortunate about that. To my mind, it's far better economically to bring back the injured worker rather than bringing in people without experience. Holding you up about 20 minutes. Have 2 eastbounds that have to leave town immediately, over.
Another enterprise with a strong commitment to disability management is Macmillan Bloedel, one of Canada's largest forest companies. CEO Tom Stevens puts a high value on the human assets of his industry.
A human life is too precious to waste. We have a responsibility to take care of our employees in the fullest extent. If someone is injured, it's our responsibility to help them to the degree possible. If we take care of our employees will take care of us. I used to use the analogy that when I worked in the paper industry, that we would think nothing of when a big motor on a paper machine burned out, a $100,000 motor. We wouldn't throw a motor on the junk pile. We would carefully rewind the coils, we would adjust the contacts, we would put that asset back to work. But traditionally, we haven't looked at human assets that way. And so I always challenge my competitors, who are generally competitive people, that we're going to outrun them unless they pay attention to their people. As an industry, in BC, we have had a disgraceful record with respect to safety and disability management. And to some degree, I'm going to challenge some people's manhood if they don't meet certain standards.
Macmillan Bloedel's progress in safety and disability management has been striking. Accident frequency has been cut in half, and the reintegration of injured workers has saved the company millions of dollars. But Tom Stevens' early days in the industry taught him to keep the financial side in perspective.
The company that we worked with urged us to never talk about it in terms of dollars and cents, but to always talk about it in terms of human values, because that was really the important part. But we can't ignore the fact that there are clear and compelling arguments about cost savings in terms of safety and disability management. To the extent we can get people back to work, there are huge economic benefits of having people part of our productive society rather than sitting on the sidelines. everything that we've done as a company that has really led to success comes from getting everyone involved. And so I think that's the mission, is to communicate, to discuss, to get everybody involved in making our company a place where we not only welcome disabled workers, but we build that as a core strength.
A clear example of the growth of disability management programs is the fact that the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is now in the process of working with its unions in adopting a disability management program right across all of its Canadian broadcast centers.
Well, I guess the greatest challenge was to get unions on board. Some of them were fearful, and we've seen over our last few meetings that the unions that were fearful at the beginning are coming on board, and this has created a better level of trust and understanding.
Dr. Seguin brings to the CBC his long experience in occupational medicine. He knows only too well that the longer an injury keeps a worker off the job, the greater the risk of other complications.
L'employé qui est à l'extérieur du travail pour une longue période de temps développe beaucoup d'anxiété face au retour au travail. Et ceci entraîne souvent des problèmes émotifs, des dépressions, qui ont un impact certain sur la vie personnelle de l'individu, sur sa vie familiale, sur sa relation avec son épouse, avec ses enfants. D'où l'importance d'intervenir précocement dans le processus de l'incapacité pour amener l'individu au travail, pour maintenir le lien avec son employeur avant que cette mentalité d'invalidité s'installe.
Disability management is becoming far more accepted as a concept that provides economic returns for the employer, but more importantly, that produces results and long-term outcomes for the disabled worker. It's being broadly adopted, it's coming to maturity, and we're seeing it enshrined in corporate policy statements, in collective agreement languages, in legislation.
One of the most significant strides in the growth of disability management came recently when the concept was brought to Ontario by the huge Workplace Safety and Insurance Board.
I'm convinced that there's a very substantial economic case to be made for prevention and a substantial case to be made for early return to work and good disability management programs.
We made a lot of mistakes when we brought people back to work. They were brought back to inappropriate jobs. They were often re-injured because nothing was done about their former job. And we found a lot of people, of course, didn't come back at all.
The new legislation in the province of Ontario requires an employer and the workplace to try and resolve return to work issues at the workplace. So there's a responsibility for the employee and the employer to cooperate and to find solutions.
In a number of workplaces, we've made some progress. Others, of course, you have some employers, even some union people are a bit resistant. But the idea is spreading and growing.
There are employers who don't understand it and haven't taken time to understand it and perhaps have too narrow a view to realize the benefits are there. But there are many employers that clearly understand that this is the right thing to do for their employees and it's the right thing to do for their businesses.
Workers are human beings. They're part of the human family. And that not just the worker gets injured, the impact then comes on the family, whether it's a man or woman, the kids, etc., the reduced income, the sort of the exclusion from what I keep saying, a workplace is a community. And so to be part of the human family, people like to have some form of work, some kind of connection to each other. And so this is really important from the human spirit side as well as from the financial side.
I've noticed in my travels around the province that where you have CEOs who are committed to health and safety, the organizations that have good programs for disability management and return to work and treat their employees right, tend to also be the companies that have good quality, good sales, and good profits.
The latest development in the spread of disability management is the opening of a NIDMAR office in Ottawa. Close contact with governments, both provincial and federal, has always been a vital part of the Institute's progress.
If all of the people who are disabled as a result of workplace injuries got back to work even a day faster, it's literally tens of millions of dollars in more output for the economy of our nation.
We as a society, we as a country, need to be as competitive as possible with others. So we need to ask everyone that can contribute something to the labor market, to the economy, to contribute whatever that is.
And this is a case where it's sort of above politics, above ideology, above the current often conflict between labor management, and both unions and management are working together in the interests of this individual and in their self-interest as well.
The Workers' Compensation Board of British Columbia has also embraced the principles of disability management. It's quite a change from the way things used to work.
Our process here in the past was one of us trying to work on the worker and the employer and the union to affect some kind of an outcome. And so we were driving the process. What we're trying to do is turn it around, and really the workers and the employers at the workplace are the people who should be driving this process, and we're trying to involve them from day one.
The board recently set an example to the BC business and labor community by establishing its own disability management program for its 2,500 employees. Debbie Richardson suffered from chronic tendinitis in her arms, complicated by the fact that she uses a wheelchair. The result was long periods off the job.
John Hewitt phoned me one day to say that he was going to come over and talk to me about getting back to work instead of staying home and on the injury list, and that they would work with me, and if I needed anything, that they would, needed more physio, they would give me more physio. And it's good to get back to work rather than sitting at home. You can only watch so much Oprah.
The solution was simple: a move to a slightly different clerical job involving less data entry and less arm strain. And Debbie couldn't be happier.
I know it's more expensive to keep me on pension or long-term disability than it is to pay me my wages. And in the long run, it's better to have, just for your own, it makes you feel, well, just for me, especially in a wheelchair, it makes me feel productive, being able to come back to work. No, I believe years ago, if you couldn't do the job, you were gone, period. Yeah.
So many of the return-to-work solutions are simple ones. Modified duties, a special tool, an adjustment to working hours. All that's required is the will to do it. The rewards are clear: an experienced, harmonious workforce and an improved bottom line. The National Institute of Disability Management recently signed an important agreement with the International Labour Organization, a division of the United Nations, to develop an international code of practice in disability management. The agreement was signed by NIDMAR's business and labor representatives and co-signed by the Federal Minister of Human Resources and the Premier of British Columbia.
It is through partnerships such as this one that we are able to work cooperatively to improve the lives of so many.
This agreement for the ILO is the first step in what we hope will be a much broader international program, first to carry out research and then transform the results of that research into very practical guidance on re-employing, retaining, or re-employing persons with disabilities.
Essentially, what we're doing with our welfare and benefit system is paying a lot of money to keep people out of work, instead of investing just a tiny part of this money to put people back to work, which makes a lot more sense.
The ILO development of an international code of practice in disability management is really the crowning symbol on an international level of the growing maturity of this concept as a recognized practice helping disabled workers and employers.
The most encouraging sign of the advance of disability management across Canada is the fact that a growing number of corporate, labor, and government leaders are becoming not just supporters of the concept, but advocates. It seems they've accepted the challenge to lead.
Everybody ought to have an opportunity to have a job and play a productive role in our society and have a decent standard of living. I think it's just a matter of rights.
There's really a great opportunity here for people to set aside some of the turf issues and understand that if we cooperate, that we will have a much better system.
There are many reasons to do it, and there's really no reason other than ignorance not to have a strong disability management in the workplace.
If I'm a worker that gets injured on the job, the payoff for me is that I am still considered to be important in society, important in the workplace.